know what one topic we actually haven't discussed today?
What's that?
NAFTA.
NAFTA.
NAFTA has not come up at all, right?
Let's hit it.
Look, look, Texas. Mexico is Texas's #1 trading partner. It's #1 or #2 in 34 states. The U.S., Mexico, and Canada, we build things together. Right? 40% of the inputs that go into something in Mexico come from the U.S., 25% in Canada, and for comparison's sake, only 4% when you talk about China.
That's right.
What I like to call is NAFTA 2.0. There are elements of NAFTA that can be improved. The President of Mexico, Peña Nieto, has said that. Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada has said that. President Trump has said that. We just need to make sure that what we build upon this in areas like energy. The energy environment in South and West Texas looked very different 30 years ago than it looks very different now than it did 30 years ago. There was not a foreign direct investment in the energy sector in Mexico 30 years ago. Even agriculture. Agriculture almost blew up NAFTA in 1993. Now it is an area where we actually see there's a lot of agreement between the U.S. and Mexico. Watch this guy. He's a little out of control. That guy needs to go. He needs to pull over and go to sleep.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody. We had
a trucker who probably needs to pull over, who was swerving a little bit. It looks like he straightened it out. Maybe just dropped his coffee.
And the so there's a lot of issues, a lot of agriculture issues where we agree with Mexico. So we should be talking about strengthening this.
Yeah.
The conversation, and I will say, President Trump has been clear he wants to improve NAFTA, not rip it up. But he has threatened that he would if the negotiations don't go the way we would like them. That has created some uncertainty, and that uncertainty has impacted the markets in Mexico. Look, in El Paso, we know this. The price of gas to fill up your car was increasing, and Juarez had an impact in El Paso as well too.
Yep.
So Wilbur Ross, the new Commerce Secretary, has said he thinks NAFTA can be strengthened. And they have, and Wilbur Ross has also said that this conversation is not going to happen soon. We still don't have a U.S. trade representative. We still don't have a U.S. ambassador to Mexico. We don't have a U.S. ambassador to Canada. These are some of the key players that are going to be involved in this debate. So we have. They're our partner. They're our friends. Our economies are interlinked, and we should be looking at NAFTA as a way to strengthen North American competitiveness in China, in Africa, places like this.
Yeah.
So this is something that is so important. We should be talking about. When we talk about border security, we should be talking about infrastructure at the ports of entry to facilitate trade and get more people and goods moving back and forth. So this is one of those issues that it really is important to our economies. What we say now has an impact on elections in Mexico. Look, it's hard to predict elections here in the U.S., let alone in another country. But there are some interesting trends that could be happening in Mexico that could ultimately hurt the bilateral relationship.
Yeah, let me add something to that. So when NAFTA passed for El Paso, the community that I represent and you represent part of it as well, it was in an immediate way absolutely devastating. Tens of thousands of people lost their jobs. Tens of thousands of families lost their primary breadwinner in terms of their ability to put food on the table. There was some trade adjustment assistance that amounted to, in some cases, trying to learn Microsoft Office and the English language for monolingual Spanish-speaking men and primarily women whose skill was sewing, for example, or some craft that wasn't going to be easily replaced by an office job or learning a new language. I think in many cases those people would have been better served with a, write them a check and say, make this investment if with whatever you think is going to be to the greatest benefit of your family or your career. But NAFTA passed, and that's what happened. It was devastating. But in the decades following NAFTA, El Paso went from primarily a low wage and manual labor skill community to a trade-based community. And today in this community in El Paso, 1 out of every 4 jobs is connected to the U.S.-Mexico relationship. 1 out of every 4. In Texas, it's nearly 500,000 jobs are connected to the bilateral trade with Mexico. And across the United States, it's 6 million jobs. So whether you liked NAFTA or not at the time, and I think there are thousands of families in El Paso who have every reason not to like NAFTA, but since then, as Will said, our economies, our countries have become inextricably connected. So for me, it's absolutely bizarre that you'd have a presidential candidate and now a president who would seek to undermine that relationship by threatening to build a wall and having Mexico pay for it, or referring to Mexican immigrants in the way that candidate Donald Trump referred to them as, or threatening to withdraw from NAFTA. These may be negotiating positions, but as someone who is from the border, interested in that binational relationship, they're deeply offensive, and I know that they're offensive to Mexico as well. And whether or not you care about Mexico, and whether or not you care about whether the president offended Mexico, you should care, and I bet you do, about the jobs in your community. And there's not a community in America that doesn't in some way depend on the U.S.-Mexico, U.S.-Mexico-Canada relationship. So as Will said, we've got to find ways to strengthen this, to improve it, to make it work where it's failing. I'll offer up one suggestion. Right now in Ciudad Juarez, many of those low-wage, lower-skilled jobs moved to Juarez after they were in El Paso. But the folks working those jobs in Juarez in some cases are making $40, $50 a week and are really having a hard time putting food on the table, paying the rent, and making ends meet. They don't have the ability to collectively bargain, to use their numbers and their value to get concessions in wages and working conditions and the ability to advance. We know, and Dan Kildee was on the phone earlier talking about the first agreement between one of the big auto manufacturers and UAW being struck in Flint, Michigan. We know that unions and the ability for workers to use their leverage to earn higher wages help build the middle class in the United States. That's not happening in Mexico today because you don't have real unions. So I'd say, if I were the president's U.S. trade representative, I'd say one of the non-conditional points of negotiation is Mexico's going to have real labor reform and have real unions with real representation for the real workers so that they are earning a real wage. That's not happening today. Needs to happen going forward. It's going to make that Mexican worker and their family earn more money, allow them to earn more money, and it's going to make the American worker more competitive because he's not competing against artificially depressed wages just south of the border. So how's that for an idea to improve NAFTA and improve the bilateral relationship? Free of charge to the administration.
Look, it's going to continue. This is going to continue to be an issue as rhetoric and political campaigns in Mexico continue to heat up. One of the candidates was recently in El Paso, as you know, and this is something that we have to get right. It's important for all of our economies.
That's right.
And this is a topic. There's a lot of guys like Henry Cuellar from Laredo, Senator Cornyn, leading on this. Trade policy is involved in Ways and Means Committee. Kevin Brady, a Texan, and so this is something that is important.